Hello guys, welcome to the CSS crash course. In this video, we will learn about flex item properties. My name is Kafui and welcome to my channel mods.dev. Please subscribe, like and hit the bell icon to get notified whenever I release a content on the channel. With that said, let's get started. In the previous video, we learned about how to create a flex container in CSS, that is setting the display property on an element to flex. So in CSS, whenever you create a flex container, the elements that are nested in that flex container are referred to as flex items. So in this video, we want to look at some properties that we can apply to flex items. So I'll just go ahead and select one of my flex items. So in my HTML, the flex items are these divs with the class of flex item 1 through to flex item 5. Let me just enlarge this for you to see. So these divs here that I've nested here are the flex items with the content of 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, and as you can see in our web page here. So in this video, we'll look at some properties that we can apply to a flex item. So I'll just go ahead and select one of them. So I'll select the third one, which is having a class of flex item 3. I'll select that quickly. So the first property we'll look at is the flex grow property. So flex grow. So the flex grow property specifies how much a flex item should grow relative to other flex items in the same container. The default value is 0, which prevents the item from growing. So I'll just set the value to 0. When I do that and save, we don't see any difference. But when I save the value to, let's say, 3 and save, now you see that the flex item is now larger, or is 3 times bigger than the rest of the items in the flex container. I'll set it to 2, and when I do that and save, you see that it is 2 times larger, or it takes twice the space as compared to the space being taken by other flex items in the flex container. So that's it about the flex grow property. So by default, the value is 0, which prevents the flex item from growing. The next flex property, or the next flex item property we'll look at, is the flex shrink property. So I'll go ahead and write it, flex shrink. So the flex shrink property specifies how much a flex item should shrink relative to other flex items in the same container. The default value is 1, which allows the item to shrink if necessary. So I'll just set the value to 1. When I do that and save, so this item will shrink in this flex container. So when I set the value to 0, this item will not shrink. So I'll just go ahead and then to this one, I'll remove the 3 and then add some elements. So I'll just add using lorem to generate, like, let's say 30 random words. When I do that and save, now you see that our item will take its length. So you see it even creates this horizontal bar here, so it will try to contain its content in the flex item. So because the value that I set the flex shrink property to 0, which means it shouldn't shrink, this item will try to, the content of the item will try to fit its flex container. So I'll set the value to 1, which will tell it to shrink, in order for other items to also have breathing space in the flex container. So upon doing that, you see that now our the content in the flex item is now moved to the next line, or wrapped to the next line. So that's it about the flex shrink property. I'll just go ahead and comment this out and then remove and do this quickly to make it the default, which is 3 that I set, so that we can continue. So the next flex item property we'll look at is the flex basis property. The flex basis property specifies the initial size of a flex item before the browser distributes any remaining space. The default value is auto, which bases the item size on its content. So I'll just go ahead and say flex basis, and then when the value is auto, this is the default value. So I can set the value to, let's say, 20 or 200 pixels. When I do that and save, so this item is now 200 pixels. So that's it about the flex basis property, which is used to set the the size of what our flex item. I can say it should be 50% of each flex container, and I think that's 50%. Let me increase it to, let's say, 80%. So as I increase it to 80%, you see that there it occupies what more space in the flex container as compared to other flex items in the flex container. The next property we'll look at is the flex property. This is a shorthand property that combines the flex grow property, the flex shrink property, and the flex basis property. So I'll just go ahead and say flex, which is a shorthand property for flex grow property. So I'll just say our item should grow, let's say 2. Then the flex shrink, I'll set the value to 1, and then the flex basis property, I'll set the value to 500 pixels. When I do that and save, so this is just a shorthand property for all these 3 properties. So in order, if you want to work with the flex grow, shrink, and flex basis property, you can use this flex shorthand property. So the first value is the flex grow property. The second value is the value for the flex shrink property, and then the third value is the value for what the flex basis property. I'll go ahead and comment that out and move on. So the next property we'll look at is the order property. The order property specifies the order in which to display the flex item. The default value is 0. So I'll just go ahead and say order. And when I set the value to 0, you don't see any difference. But when I set the value to, let's say, 1 and save, now our item is now the last, the flex item 3 is now what? The last item in the flex container. When I go ahead and select flex item, I'll select the 4th one and set the order property to, let's say, 3. When I do that and save, now since this one is having the highest order, it is now what? The last item in our flex container. So that's it about the order property, and I can put in a negative value here. So I'll just write -1 when I do that and save. So since the flex item 4 is having the lowest order value, it is now what? The first item in our flex container. The next property we'll look at is the align self property. The align self property aligns a single flex item across the cross axis of the flex container, overriding the align item property. So I'll just comment this one out and then comment the order property out here, and then say align self. So align self, so it will align this flex item across the cross axis. So the cross axis moves from the top to bottom if the flex direction is row, and then from left to right if the flex direction is column. So I'll just set the value to, let's say, center. When I do that and save, now our third item, which is this flex item 3, is now centered vertically. When I set the value to let's say flex end, when I do that and save, now it is now aligned at the bottom of the flex container. I'll just comment in this gap property so that we see it properly. So you see it over here. I can set the value to flex start, and now it will be aligned at the top of the flex container. And there are other values. I think the default value is stretch. When I do that and save, you see that it stretches vertically from top to bottom in the flex container. So that's all for this video. If you have any questions, put them in the comment section for discussion. Please subscribe, like, and hit the bell icon to get notified whenever I release a content on the channel. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next one.